I'm new to social media and I've been watching a lot of videos about, nutrition and diet trends, and had to find out that a lot of this material is scientifically not very credible. So I thought today I'm getting together with Anissa and we are going to discuss some of the top diets that are at the moment in trend, and we discuss some of the scientific foundations, and we specifically are going to rate them.
You'll hear from two scientists that study diet and the microbiome. And for some of these diet trends, we might agree completely, we might disagree. You'll have to watch and find out. My name is Anissa Armet. I'm a registered dietitian and postdoctoral fellow at the University of Alberta.
My name is Jens Walter. I'm a professor at University College Cork and the APC Microbiome Island, and I study on the interactions between diet and our gut microbiome.
If you're new to keto, welcome.
And what is keto?
It's like kung fu with bacon.
It's like a diet that Vinny made up. It's like...
There's no bread, potatoes, starches, happiness.
Can be quite beneficial when it comes to metabolism and to improve weight and early phenotypes of diabetes. However, long-term consequences are quite detrimental, specifically as it relates to cardiovascular disease, and the effects on the microbiome are very detrimental. It lacks fiber to support the microbiome, and it also causes detrimental metabolic processes likely linked to colon cancer. I rate keto low carb with 4 out of 10.
I think there is still a way to have a low carb diet while still incorporating some plant sources of fiber, like berries, for example, I know are often promoted as part of ketogenic diets, but there's still not enough options, I would say, out there that are whole foods that are still high in fiber to make like Jens said, the detrimental effects of this dietary pattern on colonic health to reduce those effects.
The goal should not be to go low carb. The goal should be to go low refined carbs and actually improve carbohydrate quality.
And I think one extra point to say is, and this will probably come up again and again, but we're ranking these diets for the general population. There are certain clinical populations that might actually benefit from a ketogenic diet more than others. Like, for example, it's been used in the treatment of epilepsy, and in some cases diabetes as well. So I think it's important to note this is for the general healthy population.
What do you rate it?
Yeah, a 4. I think a 4 is good. 4 out of 10.
Let's talk about vegan food.
Edith, what are they eating here?
Raw vegetables.
Jeez, it looks like the bottom of a hamster's cage.
The big question, the debate, is whether vegan food is better for you than red meat.
No vegan diet, no vegan powers.
Okay, vegan. If it's a good vegan diet, I rate it 9 out of 10, because it's very healthy. If it's a bad vegan diet, and when I say bad, I mean, a lot of processed vegan foods and also not considering some of the micronutrient deficiencies that you can get when you cut out animal-based projects, then I rate it 2 out of 10.
That's fair. So I will declare my bias that I follow a vegan diet myself, but I would still give it 8 out of 10 for the general healthy population. I agree with Jens that you have to have that asterisk that it's a healthy vegan diet and that most of the foods are coming from whole plant foods and not processed foods like Oreos and French fries that are vegan. But I fully recognize that not everybody has access to the nutrition education or a dietitian needed to really help you plan out your eating throughout the day because of these foods that are restricted in a vegan diet.
But wow, then I rated a healthy vegan diet higher than you. I gave it 9 out of 10.
Yeah, again, for considering if everybody in the population were to try to eat a vegan diet, it probably wouldn't be the healthiest choice, knowing that a lot of people wouldn't be able to get the proper nutrition they need from it.
Try some Mediterranean food, Stan. This is how they eat in blue zones.
Maybe.
I could give the Mediterranean diet a try.
You did a real 180 on this Mediterranean stuff, Dad.
Well, that falafel really changed my life.
It's pretty much the gold standard of healthy eating. The evidence base is very, very strong. So I rate it 10 out of 10. It's also very good for your microbiome. It ticks all the boxes. The one actually grievance that I have with the Mediterranean diet that I'm not sure it is actually a very good name, because it is not really what, most people in the Mediterranean eat today, because the Mediterranean diet is not pizza and pasta and gyros and fries. Most people who follow a Mediterranean diet, of course, know, that more about, plant-based foods, lots of vegetables, fish, specifically a lot of olive oil.
Yeah, I would agree, 10 out of 10. I think another benefit to this type of dietary pattern is there's a lot of flexibility in it, in terms of there are many different countries that surround the Mediterranean Sea. And so there's a lot of room for differences in cultural, food preferences that still fall under the umbrella of the Mediterranean diet.
Another confusing aspect I found is actually the role of cheese in a Mediterranean diet, which is I actually really even read up on this, and I'm not sure this is 100% established. It always says it should be low amounts of cheese and rather low fat varieties, but again, this is where it becomes confusing because feta, for example, is actually hugely traditional to exactly these regions. But look, any of these diets come with certain confusions, and nuances, so it's very hard, to, describe an entire dietary pattern, by one name.
We have all heard of the paleo diet, the keto diet, the Atkins diet, but how many of you have heard of the flexitarian diet?
I'm quite excited about it. The reason for this is because also flexitarian means, you primarily are plant-based and so the word play is probably based on vegan, so it's flexitarian. But then you are allowed to add small amounts of, protein and animal protein and cheese. So I think it's a good dietary pattern. I would probably rate it with 8 out of 10. And another thing that I like with it is that it gets, the core of healthy eating right. And it really reminds me of Michael Pollan's famous one-sentence dietary advice, when he says, all about healthy eating is, eat food, not too much, mostly plant. That, if you think about it, actually describes a flexitarian diet.
So flexitarian, I would rate a 9 out of 10. I think the general population is really lacking in terms of fiber, potassium, folate, important nutrients that really come from those plant foods, while still giving people the flexibility to include animal-based proteins in their diet.
This is probably one of the most controversial things in relation to food today.
There's a controversial diet trend. It's taking off on social media, but not just there. The parents of carnivore kids say they've swapped traditional baby foods like pureed fruits and veggies for an all-animal-based approach.
Carnivore diet. I give it a 10 out of 10. And the reason is I saw a topless caveman sit in an airplane on social media and he was full of muscles, and that is all the evidence I need.
Yeah, I think as a scientist, yeah.
All right, in all seriousness, now I rate it 1 or 2 out of 10. The reason is it's probably good on a very, very short-term basis, to gain muscle, for strength training, actually probably also fix certain metabolic issues. But when it comes to long-term consequences, in terms of cardiovascular health, it's probably one of the most detrimental diets. It also has very detrimental effects on the microbiome. We actually studied or see many of these effects in our studies that, pro-inflammatory bacteria thrive on animal fat. We get a lot of these cancer-inducing metabolites produced by gut bacteria, and we can really trace this back to animal fat, so as a meaning to eat just animal, meat products is going to be very detrimental to both long-term health and actually your microbiome metabolism.
I will be a little bit more harsh and say 0 out of 10. And that is not, trust me, that is not because it's the antithesis of a vegan diet and what I consume, but because there's virtually no scientific evidence. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence, no scientific evidence in support of it. And for the general healthy population, I think you are risking being deficient in so many different nutrients, especially fiber, and it's just not a long-term solution whatsoever. So 0.
Intermittent fasting for weight loss has rapidly gained popularity.
My short fast would be 16 hours where I would eat
That's a short fast.
That would be a short fast.
That's a long one for me.
Really? Yeah. Dude, you got to get in touch with your evolutionary.
I'd give intermittent fasting 6 out of 10. I think there can be a lot of benefits to it for metabolic health and weight management, and we could probably all benefit from not snacking as much and extending the periods of time between meals. But I think it also comes with drawbacks, particularly when you try to fit all of what you're eating in a day and all your nutrition into a very short period of time. There can be nutritional deficiencies that come with that.
And I've seen research being presented on it both at nutrition conferences, and I discussed it with individuals who are interested in the microbiome. And what Anissa said is true. That it seems like there's some promising preliminary evidence that it actually has metabolic benefits.
Jens, is there any evidence that intermittent fasting can totally reset your microbiome?
I am not aware of any of that evidence. And from everything that I know about how diet influences the microbiome, it would also very much surprise me.
One of the latest dietary trends on social media, it's called Fibremaxxing.
Up to 80% of us do not get enough fiber.
The trend has made it super sort of sexy right now. Science has always known that fiber is fabulous.
Fibremaxxing isn't really a dietary pattern, but it's for once a social media trend that I can support. If it means that you're trying to get as much fiber as you can in a day from whole plant foods. When you're trying to fiber max by eating fiber fortified processed foods or supplements, probably not going to get nearly the same benefits as you would if you were trying to eat as many beans and vegetables as you can.
So I agree. It's one of the few social media trends, that I'm actually quite happy about. I especially like it if you look at average fiber intake in industrialized countries, US, Canada, Ireland. We're talking about 15 grams, 20 grams per day. So recommended is 35 grams. So meaning that even if you double your fiber intake, you are still within what is recommended. So I've seen now some careful voices on especially LinkedIn, warning about excessive fiber intake. But again, I think we have to consider, that most of us only eat half of what is recommended. So you can max quite a bit before you have to actually get worried, I would say.
And it's not something you have to do overnight either. I mean, fiber maxing can be a gradual process. You don't have to go from 15 to 40 grams of fiber overnight, because that's where you will experience a lot of symptoms that will probably mean you won't follow it the day after.
Yeah, and if you do the Mediterranean and Flexitarian diets, and also NiMe, if you do it right, you are pretty much maxed out on dietary fiber, because there is not much more you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, researchers from the University of Alberta are part of a team that have developed a new diet they say can significantly reduce chronic diseases like obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. So this is part of the NiMe Diet. Can you explain what NiMe stands for?
Yeah, so NiMe stands for Non-Industrialized Microbiome Restored Diet.
We might be a bit biased.
Yes, we are both biased and have a conflict of interest, but obviously we do believe in it. But we also, want to emphasize, that it has a lot of overlap, specifically, for example, with the Mediterranean diet. And as I just mentioned, the Mediterranean is also a pre-industrialized diet. So even down from some of the core principles, the diets are actually similar. What is interesting is actually that the diets, the thinking about the diets is very different, because the Mediterranean diet I think started with observational studies in these, Mediterranean diets, while countries, while we obviously started, by microbiome research in non-industrialized populations. But at the end, I think the patterns actually converge. So what I do like with NiMe is, that it has a certain mechanistic underpinning. That you say, look, we really think about how industrialization has actually changed foods. And can we now, within the constraints of a industrialized food system, can we actually adjust some of this, and eat more how, humans ate, before, the onset of industrialization.
With NiMe Diet, it almost pulls the best of a lot of different dietary patterns. And for example, I've heard some people say it's just a glorified paleo diet. But with a paleo diet, it restricts things like whole grains and legumes like beans, lentils, chickpeas, claiming that, and rightfully so, that pre-industrialization, those foods weren't around. But I don't think that's enough grounds that we should exclude those foods now, given our food environment. It's similar to Flexitarian, it's similar to Mediterranean, similar even to paleo, and definitely is Fibremaxxing, but it really is based on how we know our new food environment and our diet has negatively impacted the microbiome and how we can restore that.